The hallway of Hargrove Academy had never been so quiet. Dorothy Mae Simmons stood 6 feet from the most powerful man in the room, her mop handle resting against her hip, her white sneakers squeaking once on the marble as she shifted her weight. Wei Liang Chen had just finished speaking, a low, dry sentence in Mandarin, meant only for his translator's ears. A sentence about incompetence, about appearances, about a school that had clearly mistaken a large donation for a personality. Dorothy finished her stroke, set the mop aside, and then she spoke, quietly, precisely, in Mandarin. Underscore underscore, quote underscore 0 underscore underscore. The translator's pen stopped moving. One of Chen's advisors looked up from his phone. Headmaster Gerald Ashworth, mid-laugh at nothing in particular, let the sound die in his throat, like a candle going out. Chen turned slowly. He looked at her. Really looked. The mop. The worn left sneaker, its sole beginning to separate at the toe. The small green spiral notebook tucked in the corner of her cleaning card, its cover soft with handling. Quote 1, he said, still in Mandarin. Quote 2. Dorothy said. Quote. Сейчас. Quote 4. The corridor smelled of floor wax and old wood, and, faintly, the ghost of cafeteria food drifting up from the floor below. The fluorescent light above the financial aid office door buzzed at its usual low frequency, the one Dorothy had reported 6 weeks ago, and nobody had fixed. Morning light pressed through the tall windows at the end of the hall, making long gold shapes on the floor between them. Ashworth stepped forward. Quote 5. Chen raised one hand. He did not look at Ashworth. Ashworth stopped talking. Quote 6. Chen asked her. Dorothy reached into her cart, pulled out the green notebook, held it, not offering it yet, just holding it. Quote 7, she said. Quote 8. She paused. Quote 9. A student rounded the far corner of the hallway, backpack slung over one shoulder, earbuds in. She saw the stillness, the circle of people, Dorothy at the center of it. She pulled one earbud out, took 2 steps back around the corner, stayed there, watching. Chen's advisor put his phone in his pocket. The translator wrote nothing down, and Dorothy Mae Simmons stood in the hallway she had mopped for 11 years, in the sneakers she'd worn for 2, holding a green notebook that had cost her $1.29, and she did not look away. But no one in that hallway knew what she had been carrying to get to this moment. Before we get back to what happened next, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Someone near you might be watching this same story right now, and if stories like this move you, subscribe. New ones every week. It started on a Tuesday in October, 3 years earlier. The alarm didn't wake Dorothy Mae Simmons. She was already awake. 4:47 a.m. The radiator clanged once, then settled into its low, steady knock. The fun is just beginning. Tell us what city you're from in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. The tension is rising. Who's watching from where? Like and subscribe to the channel. More to come. Tell us in the comments who's from which country, and give us a like and subscribe. The plot thickens. Let's check our geography. Tell us where you are now, give the video a thumbs up, and subscribe. We're just warming up. Tell us where you're watching from. Give the video a like and hit the subscribe button. The climax is near. Share where you're from, like, and be sure to subscribe. Events are unfolding rapidly. Write your city in the chat, give it a like, and subscribe so you don't get lost. The juiciest part is yet to come. Let's get started. Get to know each other. Where are you from? Like and subscribe right now. The suspense is building. Tell us where you're watching this episode from, and reward us with a like and a subscribe. The excitement is running high. Tell us what city you're from now. Give us a big like and subscribe to the channel. The apartment was dark except for the kitchen light she'd left on, the one above the stove that hummed faintly and threw a yellow circle onto the linoleum. She moved through the small space without turning on anything else. She knew every step. Oatmeal first, brown sugar. A banana sliced thin, the way Imani liked it, even though Imani would claim she was too old to care about things like that. Dorothy packed the lunch next. Turkey and cheese on wheat bread, cut diagonally. Earl had always cut it that way, and she'd never stopped. An apple, a small bag of pretzels. She folded the paper bag twice at the top and set it by the door. At 5:10, she knocked on Imani's door. "Bus in 30, she said through the wood. A groan from inside. Then, "I know, Grandma. I know you know." Dorothy dressed in the dark of her own room. Dark slacks, a gray cardigan, her white New Balance sneakers, which she'd cleaned the night before with a damp cloth, the way she did every Sunday, though the left sole had started separating at the toe, and no amount of cleaning fixed that. New sneakers would have to wait until February, when the tax return came. She was on the 5:42 bus by 5:39. She always was. Hargrove Academy sat 12 minutes from the stop on Edmondson Avenue, up a long hill lined with oak trees that were beautiful in October and treacherous in January. Dorothy had walked that hill 2,300 mornings, give or take. She knew which step on the side entrance creaked. She knew the smell of the building before the heat kicked on. Cold stone and old wood, and something faintly sweet she'd never been able to identify, like a memory of someone else's childhood. She started in the east corridor. Cartwheels on marble, the sound bouncing off the trophy cases. Morning light came through the tall windows at 7:10 and made gold rectangles on the floor, and Dorothy always slowed her cart when she reached them, just slightly, without meaning to. She had a mathematics degree from Morgan State University, class of 1989. She hadn't hidden it. Nobody had ever asked. On her locker door, she kept a small laminated card. Her late husband Earl had given it to her on their wedding day, laughing when he handed it over. It read, "Numbers don't lie, people do." She'd laughed too back then. Later, after Earl was gone, after her daughter was gone, after she'd taken this job because it was close to home and the school was hiring and Imani needed stability more than Dorothy needed pride, she'd stopped laughing at it. She'd kept it anyway. That morning, she stopped at her locker before her shift, touched the edge of the card with one finger, and went to get her cart. She didn't know yet that something was waiting for her in the recycling bin outside the financial aid office. The recycling cart sat outside the financial aid office every Tuesday morning, loaded with whatever the staff had cleared from their desks the day before. Old memos, printed drafts, the kind of paperwork that felt important until it didn't. Dorothy usually rolled past it without looking. That Tuesday in October, 3 years before the marble hallway and the silence and the green notebook, something made her stop. A number caught her eye. The spreadsheet was face up on top of the pile, still crisp, barely crumpled. She almost kept walking. She told herself she almost kept walking. But the decimal point was in the wrong place, and Dorothy Mae Simmons had not spent 4 years at Morgan State looking away from wrong numbers. She set her cart brake, leaned in, read it twice. The error was clean and quiet and devastating. A family's adjusted income had been calculated at 10 times its actual figure. One misplaced decimal, the kind a tired person makes at the end of a long day, the kind that, in this context, meant a student had been assessed as ineligible for financial aid they should have received in full. $14,000. Gone. Quietly. On a spreadsheet no one was checking. Dorothy stood in the hallway for a long moment. The fluorescent light above the office door buzzed its usual low note. From somewhere below, the cafeteria had started breakfast. She could smell eggs and something burnt, and the industrial cleaner they used on the kitchen floors. She reached into her cart, found a sticky note, yellow, slightly wrinkled, a pencil stub. She wrote the correction in small, even numbers, left it folded over the office door handle. No name, no explanation. Just the number. Fixed. She didn't tell anyone. She pushed her cart to the west corridor and finished her shift. The next Tuesday, she found another error. Different student. Different amount. Same quiet, compounding damage. That evening, she sat at the kitchen table while Imani did homework under the lamp with the flickering bulb. Imani's backpack hung on her chair, covered in sewn-on patches, a moon, a small calculator, a Baltimore flag the size of a playing card. She was working through a calculus problem set, erasing more than she wrote. "Grandma," Imani said, not looking up, "is it normal to feel like you understand something and then suddenly you don't?" Dorothy looked at her. "Every day. That's not comforting." "It wasn't meant to be. It means you're paying attention." Imani erased something again. The pencil made a soft, tired sound on the paper. "My teacher said I should think about engineering programs. Like, seriously think." "You should. They're expensive." Dorothy didn't answer right away. She looked at the flickering bulb, thought about the spreadsheet, thought about $14,000 and a decimal point, and how small a mistake could be, and how large its shadow. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore, 21, underscore, underscore, she said. Finally. Imani looked up then, studying her grandmother's face the way teenagers do when they suspect an adult is carrying something they haven't been told about. She was right. Dorothy went to the dollar store the next morning and bought a green spiral notebook for $1.29. By December of that first year, Dorothy had filled 11 pages of the green notebook. She kept it at the bottom of her cart, beneath the spare roll of paper towels and the extra bottle of pine cleaner. Nobody looked in her cart. Nobody looked at her cart at all. Really, it was just part of the hallway, like the trophy cases and the water fountains and the crack in the baseboard outside room 114 that she'd reported twice and nobody had fixed. The pattern had become clear by then. It wasn't random carelessness. The financial aid office used a formula. Old software, she suspected, or a spreadsheet template someone had built years ago and never updated. That consistently miscalculated income adjustments for families below a certain threshold. The errors always ran the same direction, always against the student, always quiet enough that no single mistake looked like anything more than a typo. Dorothy logged each one. Student initials, date, error amount, corrected figure. She left her anonymous sticky notes when she could. She didn't know if anyone was reading them. She left them anyway. Then one morning in February, she noticed something that made her set down her mop and stand very still in the hallway. Priya Anand's locker had a piece of tape over the nameplate. Dorothy stared at it. The tape was the beige kind, the kind used for packing boxes, slightly crooked. Someone had pressed it over the name quickly, without much care. The locker next to it still had its nameplate. The one after that too. Just Priya's. Covered. That evening, Imani came home quiet. She dropped her backpack by the door and sat at the kitchen table without taking her coat off. Dorothy put a mug of tea in front of her. Chamomile, the kind Imani pretended she was too old to like. "Priya's gone," Imani said. Dorothy sat down across from her. "Gone where?" "Transferred. Her family." Imani stopped, pulled at a loose thread on her coat sleeve. "They said they couldn't afford it anymore. The fees went up, and the aid didn't cover enough." She looked up. She didn't even get to say goodbye properly. She was just not there. Dorothy's hands were flat on the table, completely still. Underscore, underscore, Quote underscore 27 underscore underscore. Imani said. She wrapped both hands around the mug. Dorothy said. Imani went to her room. Dorothy sat at the table for a long time after that, the tea cooling in front of her, the refrigerator humming its low, indifferent hum. She got up, went to her cart in the hallway closet, took out the green notebook. She turned to a fresh page, wrote Priya's initials at the top. Then the scholarship amount the family should have received. She'd seen the file on the recycling cart 3 months ago and hadn't understood its significance until right now. She underlined the number. Then she underlined it again. She didn't leave a sticky note that week. She started looking for something else, a way to make sure someone with actual authority would have to look at what she'd found. Spring came, and Dorothy kept finding errors. Summer passed. Fall returned. The green notebook filled up slowly, page by page, the way damage always accumulates, quietly, in small amounts, until the total is something no one can explain away. By the second year, she had documented 19 separate cases. She had also started to understand the shape of the problem. It wasn't the formula alone. The formula was old, yes, but someone had been responsible for updating it, and someone had decided not to. The financial aid office had 2 full-time staff members and a director named Mr. Calloway, who wore the same blue blazer every Friday and spoke at every parent information night about Hargrove's deep commitment to access and equity. Dorothy had mopped the hallway outside his office for 11 years. She had heard him say those words so many times they had become a kind of wallpaper. One afternoon in October of the second year, she was working near the main office when she overheard Calloway speaking to a junior administrator named Tessa, young, efficient, always slightly nervous, her heels clicking fast on the marble like she was perpetually late for something. "The Henderson file," Calloway said. His voice was low, the kind of low that isn't quiet so much as careful. Tessa said. A pause. Dorothy didn't stop moving her mop. "Run it again," Calloway said. Another pause. Longer this time. "The formula will give the same result," Tessa said carefully. "Then adjust the input figures. The reported income needs to be cross-referenced with the regional average. There's a field for that. That field is optional. Use it." Dorothy heard Tessa's heels click away down the corridor. She heard Calloway's office door close. She kept mopping. Her face didn't change. Her hands didn't shake. But she stood in that hallway for a moment after the sound faded, mop still, and breathed. She knew what adjust the input figures meant. She'd been looking at the results of it for 2 years. That evening, Imani was at the kitchen table with a college prep workbook, thick, dog-eared, borrowed from the school library. She had a highlighter in each hand, yellow and pink, and she was color-coding sections with the focused intensity of someone who understood that the margin between getting in and not getting in was thinner than people admitted. Quote, 43. Quote, she said without looking up. Quote, 44. Quote, Dorothy set a plate of rice and chicken in front of her. Quote, 45. Quote, 46. Quote, Dorothy sat down, looked at her granddaughter's careful, highlighted pages, thought about Calloway's voice, about the word adjust, about 19 names in a green notebook. Dorothy said slowly. Imani looked up then. Quote, 49, quote, 50. Dorothy agreed. Quote, 51, quote. She went to bed early that night. She lay in the dark and thought about Tessa's heels clicking away down the corridor. Fast, uncertain, the sound of someone who knew something was wrong and had decided, for now, to keep walking. Dorothy had made a different decision. The announcement went up on a Thursday, a single printed page in a glass case near the main entrance, the kind the school used for honor roll lists and event notices. Dorothy read it while emptying the trash can beneath the case. Hargrove Academy is pleased to announce a visit from Wei Liang Chen, founder and chairman of Liang Technologies, in connection with a proposed gift to support student excellence. She read it twice. Then she went back to her cart. That evening, Imani found her at the kitchen table with the green notebook open, a cup of tea gone cold beside it. Dorothy had been cross-referencing her entries against the school's published tuition and aid figures, numbers she'd memorized from the parent information brochures stacked near the front office. The math was not complicated. The total was. "You've been staring at that thing for an hour," Imani said from the doorway. "I know." Imani came in and sat across from her. She looked at the notebook, really looked for the first time. Columns of figures, initials, dates, correction amounts circled in pencil. "Grandma, what is that?" Dorothy closed it. "Something I've been keeping track of." "Of what?" A long pause. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a car passed slowly, its headlights sweeping across the curtains Dorothy had sewn from church sale fabric. "Mistakes," Dorothy said finally. "Ones that keep costing the same kind of people." Imani was quiet for a moment. She pulled the notebook toward her. Dorothy let her. Imani opened it to the first page, then the middle, then near the end. Her finger stopped on Priya's initials. Imani sat back. Her face did something complicated, the kind of thing a face does when it's deciding between anger and grief, and lands somewhere between them. "For how long?" 3 years. "And you just kept a notebook?" "I left corrections, anonymous ones." Dorothy wrapped both hands around the cold mug. "Nobody asked where they came from." "Nobody knew it was you." "No." Imani looked at the notebook again, then at her grandmother. "What are you going to do?" Dorothy had been asking herself that question for 3 years. She'd answered it 100 different ways, none of them satisfying. She was a janitor. She had no standing, no title, no institutional voice. The sticky notes had been absorbed into the system without acknowledgement. Calloway was still in his blue blazer. Tessa's heels still clicked fast down the corridor. But now there was a name in a glass case near the front entrance. A man arriving next week who had reportedly built something from nothing, in a country not his own, in a language the world hadn't expected him to speak. Dorothy understood something about that. Quote, 69, quote, she said. Quote, 70, quote, she looked at Imani. Quote, 71, quote, Imani studied her. Quote, 72. Quote, Dorothy didn't answer right away. She picked up the green notebook and held it in both hands, feeling the soft, worn cover against her palms. "I'm going to be in the hallway," she said, "like I always am." If this story is moving you, tap the like button and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Wei Liang Chen arrived on a Wednesday morning in a black car that parked precisely at the curb. No fuss, no extra vehicles. He stepped out in a dark gray suit with no tie, a watch on his left wrist that caught the November light in a way that suggested it cost more than Dorothy's annual salary. He was 44 years old and moved like someone who had long ago stopped being impressed by rooms designed to impress him. Dorothy watched from the east corridor window as Headmaster Ashworth came down the front steps too quickly, hand already extended, smile already deployed. Chen shook it once. Brief. Efficient. She went back to her cart. The tour moved through the building the way these things always did. The library first, then the science wing, then the new technology lab that still smelled of fresh paint and unopened boxes. Dorothy tracked their path by sound. Ashworth's voice bouncing off the high ceilings, loud and slightly too enthusiastic, like a man auditioning for a role he'd already been given. She positioned her cart outside the financial aid office at 9:40 a.m. She had a reason to be there. The hallway needed mopping. It always needed mopping. And she began her slow, methodical strokes across the marble, the pine cleaner smell rising faintly around her. She heard them before she saw them. The fund would be designated for STEM programming, Ashworth was saying. Robotics, advanced mathematics, our new. Where does the current aid money go? Chen's voice was quieter than Ashworth's, much quieter. The kind of quiet that made you lean in. We have a robust financial aid program, very competitive. Our team reviews every application with, what percentage of applicants receive full scholarships? A half-beat pause. I'd have to get you the exact figures. I'd like the exact figures. Dorothy kept mopping. She did not look up, but she heard the slight change in Ashworth's breathing, the almost imperceptible recalibration of a man who had prepared for admiration and was receiving something else entirely. Chen said something then to his translator, low, in Mandarin. A dry, precise observation that the school seemed far more comfortable discussing what the money would build than accounting for what it had already been given to do. That the hallways were polished, but the answers were not. Dorothy finished her stroke, moved the mop back, set it aside. She looked up. Chen was 6 feet away. His translator stood slightly behind him, pen hovering. One advisor had his phone half raised, then lowered it. Ashworth was smiling the smile that meant something had shifted and he hadn't caught up yet. Dorothy felt the green notebook against her palm through the side of the cart. She had put it there that morning deliberately, the way you pack something you might need and hope you won't. She had spent 3 years leaving anonymous corrections on door handles. She had spent 3 years watching sticky notes disappear into a system that didn't ask where they came from. She was tired of being anonymous. She opened her mouth, and she spoke, quietly, in Mandarin, the language she had studied for 6 years at Morgan State, because numbers, she had always believed, were only half the story. The other half was being understood. The hallway went completely still. Chen turned slowly. His eyes moved from Dorothy's face to the mop, to the cart, to the green notebook tucked against its side. He didn't speak immediately. He was the kind of man who had learned that silence, used correctly, was more precise than any question. You understood that, he said, still in Mandarin. Yes, Dorothy said. All of it? Every word. Ashworth stepped forward, his smile recalibrating in real time. Mr. Chen, perhaps we should move on to the… Chen raised one hand. He did not look at Ashworth. His eyes stayed on Dorothy. Ashworth's voice stopped as cleanly as a switch being thrown. Quote, _87 Chen asked her. Dorothy reached into the cart. Her fingers found the green notebook's soft cover, worn smooth at the corners from 3 years of handling. She pulled it out, held it without offering it yet. 23 students, she said. 3 years. A formula error that consistently ran the same direction, against the student, against the family, against anyone who couldn't afford to push back. She paused. I documented every case. Dates, amounts, corrections. I left notes when I could. Nobody asked where they came from. Chen looked at the notebook, then at her. Who are you? Dorothy Mae Simmons. I clean the floors on this hallway. She held his gaze. I also have a degree in mathematics from Morgan State University, class of 1989. The translator had stopped writing. The advisor's phone was in his pocket. At the far end of the corridor, a student had rounded the corner, seen the stillness, and backed up quietly to watch from a distance, one earbud dangling. Ashworth's smile had changed. It was still present. Technically. but it had become the kind of smile that means the opposite of what it looks like. "Mrs. Simmons," he said, his voice careful and smooth, "our financial aid process is reviewed annually by—" "The formula hasn't been updated in at least 4 years," Dorothy said. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "The regional income adjustment field is being applied selectively. I have the dates." A beat of silence so complete that the fluorescent light above the office door was audible, its low, persistent buzz that had been there for 6 weeks and nobody had fixed. Chen looked at her for a long moment. Something shifted in his face, not surprise exactly, but recognition. The particular recognition of someone who has spent a lifetime being the person in the room that others spoke around, assuming he couldn't hear or understand or matter. __, quote _98, __, he said. Dorothy held it out. He took it with both hands, a small, deliberate gesture, and opened it to the first page. He read in silence. His expression didn't change, but he turned the pages carefully, the way a person handles something they understand to be significant. "I'll need a private meeting," he said. Not to Ashworth, to Dorothy. "I'm available," she said. "I have a half hour before the West Corridor needs doing." Chen almost smiled. "Almost." "That will be sufficient," he said. The private meeting lasted 40 minutes and took place in a small conference room that smelled of leather chairs and old coffee and the particular staleness of a room used for decisions nobody wanted to make out loud. Dorothy sat across from Chen with the green notebook open between them. His 2 advisors sat to one side. Ashworth had positioned himself at the head of the table, which was not his seat to take, but nobody said so yet. Dorothy walked them through it, page by page. Dates, initials, error amounts, corrected figures. Her voice was steady and quiet, the way it always was when she was working with numbers. Certain, unhurried, precise. Chen asked questions, good ones, the kind that told her he had already understood the structure of the problem and was now testing the edges of it. "The formula error," he said. "Was it ever reported internally?" "I reported the individual corrections, anonymously." Dorothy turned to a page near the middle of the notebook. 3 of them were acted on. 20 were not. "And the selective application of the adjustment field?" Dorothy looked at Ashworth. He was very still. His blue blazer had a small coffee stain near the second button that she had never noticed before, or perhaps it was new. "That," she said carefully, "is a question for the people who built the process." Ashworth set both hands flat on the table. "I want to be very clear that any inconsistencies in our formula were a software issue, a technical matter. There was no intent." 23 students, Chen said. He didn't raise his voice. He simply said the number, the way you set something heavy on a table. Quote, 1, 1, 2, quote. He paused. Quote, 1, 1, 3, quote. The room went quiet. The HVAC hummed above them. Tessa, the junior administrator, was seated near the door. She had her pen pressed against her notepad, but wasn't writing anything. Her face was the face of someone who had known something for a long time and had been waiting, without knowing it, for this exact room. "Mrs. Simmons," Chen said, turning back to Dorothy, "is this notebook complete?" "It's everything I found," she said. "There may be cases I missed. I only see what comes through the hallway." Chen nodded slowly. He closed the notebook. Then he slid it back across the table to her, deliberately, with both hands, the same way he had taken it. "I'd like an independent auditor brought in," he said. "External, not connected to this institution." He looked at Ashworth. "My donation is contingent on 3 things: a full independent review of the financial aid process, retroactive corrections for every affected student that can be identified. He paused, and a formal, documented acknowledgement of the work Mrs. Simmons has done. Ashworth's mouth opened, closed. Underscore, underscore, quote underscore 122 underscore underscore. The board member beside him started, quote 123, quote 124, quote Chen agreed pleasantly, quote 125, quote he stood, quote 126, quote. Dorothy picked up the green notebook, held it against her chest for just a moment, the worn cover warm under her hands. Outside in the hallway, the fluorescent light above the financial aid office had finally stopped buzzing. Someone, at some point, had fixed it. She hadn't noticed until now. 6 months later, Priya Anand came back to Hargrove Academy on a Thursday morning in April. She was a junior now at a public school across town, still brilliant, still studying. Her backpack newer, but her eyes exactly the same. Watchful, precise, the kind that miss nothing. The retroactive scholarship had been issued in January. The letter had gone to her family's apartment on a Tuesday, and her mother had called the school 3 times to confirm it was real. Dorothy was mopping the east corridor when Priya walked in. She stopped when she saw Dorothy. Dorothy set the mop aside. Priya said. Her voice was careful, like she was carrying something fragile. Dorothy said. Priya looked at her for a long moment. Then she stepped forward and hugged her. Not the polite kind, the real kind, the kind that takes a second to start and then doesn't want to stop. Dorothy stood very still and let herself be held. Imani appeared at the end of the corridor, backpack over one shoulder, and when she saw Priya, she made a sound that wasn't quite a word and covered the distance between them in about 4 steps. They stood in Dorothy's hallway, the one she had mopped 2,300 mornings, and held on to each other without saying anything at all. The auditor's report had been filed in December. 23 students confirmed. Calloway resigned quietly before the new year, his blue blazer presumably going with him. Tessa, the junior administrator, was asked to stay. She had cooperated fully with the review and, it turned out, had kept records of her own. The financial aid process was rebuilt from the ground up. The Earl Simmons Mathematics Access Fund was announced in February. Chen had named it after Dorothy mentioned Earl only once, offhandedly, in the conference room. And Chen had remembered. The fund was designed to provide full scholarships to 10 students annually from families earning under $40,000 a year. Dorothy was asked to sit on the advisory board. She said yes. A small envelope arrived from Chen's office the following week. Inside was a brass coin, Chinese, etched with the character for integrity, worn smooth at the edges as though it had been carried a long time. Dorothy placed it on her dresser, next to a photograph of Earl. Imani's acceptance letter came on a Tuesday morning in March. She ran into the kitchen, waving it, her socks sliding on the linoleum, her voice doing something between a shout and a laugh. Dorothy turned from the stove. Read the letter once, then sat down at the kitchen table and held it in both hands and breathed. Imani said. Dorothy looked up. Imani said firmly. The lamp above the table burned steady and bright. Dorothy had replaced the bulb 2 weeks ago. The pothos on the windowsill had been repotted, its leaves green and reaching. The green notebook sat on the shelf, not thrown away. Kept. Dorothy still took the 5:42 bus. She still worked at Hargrove. She chose to stay. Her sneakers were new, white New Balance, both soles intact, cleaned every Sunday night with a damp cloth. Earl used to say, "Dot, you've always been the smartest person in every room you've ever cleaned." She hadn't believed him then. She was starting to now. And for Dorothy Mae Simmons, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. If this story moved you, hit the like button and subscribe. New stories every week. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done in her place? And next time, we'll bring you another story